Hi, I'm Meta Spencer. Today, I think it's time for us to think about how to fix the world. We talk about Project Save the World, and I have a new partner, a new friend in Salzburg, Austria, who has an organization called Better World Info, um, and he has been collecting connections to organizations around the world for many years that are all working in various ways of improving the world, making it a better world. So we have a lot in common. And his name is Dr. Norbert Stute. He's a retired hematologist in Salzburg, but I think he spends most of his time working on this wonderful project of his, the Better World Institute. And good morning, Norbert. How are you?
Yes, good morning or good evening.
It's
uh,
actually afternoon here at two, so I should. Anyway, I also want to introduce a very dear friend of mine, a close associate. In fact, I think she's very likely to be my successor in running Project Save the World. And this is Jill Carr Harris. Everybody should get acquainted with Jill if you've been following our show, because she's going to be around a lot more. And Jill is a Gandhian organizer in India. She and her husband, Rajagopal, have an organization called Jai Jagat, or actually, that's sort of a project of another organization, I guess, called Ekta Parashad, which they have been running, and they have various ashrams in three different places in India and organize things, training young men and women, I guess, to do things for work and how to be sustainable and so on. So she's been doing many wonderful activities in India, but now spends more of her time in Canada, which is her home country originally. So good. It is afternoon. So good afternoon, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you.
Say hi.
Hi. Hi, everybody. This is a pleasure to be on the show.
Okay, and we may be joined shortly, in a little while, by a colleague of Norbert who works with this Better World Info, and but she's struggling with her equipment, and Jill's going to have to leave after a bit. So I want to get going. So let's plunge right in. And Norbert, you've been doing this for a long time, and you certainly have me beat because I thought I had a big network, but I can't compete with you. You have hundreds of thousands of people on your website. Is that right? And you can.
no, not quite. It's links, informations, sources, organizations.
Mhm. But
Uh,
but you connect them through a website, don't you?
yes, indeed. Yeah,
Pardon me. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, tell us about your project and when you started it and what you're doing with it.
Yep. So Better World Info is a project I started about almost 30 years ago.
Wow.
However, only in recent years, we improved it a lot with more information, more texts, um, uh, more visual, and social media contacts. Better World Info is a kind of a central information hub for a better world. So from the very beginning, we started with topics like peace, human rights, environment, and social justice, um, which has blossomed since. So other topics joined in, like politics, like climate, like education. And we essentially try to provide information and a platform for people who want to make this world a better place. Compared to more modern products, we were kind like a Google directory for active citizens and NGOs, so not for commerce. And we are headed towards becoming or working like a Wikipedia for a better world. with a focus on quality links. So we all know Wikipedia is good, it's huge, but its focus is not really on Better World. And the links they provide are usually articles from sources and newspapers, which is not necessarily helpful for active citizens working on topics that are relevant to us. And that's essentially what Meta and her team started to work with, to figure out most important global topics and provide information, but mainly in the form of videos.
Mhm.
So I guess that's where we connect, because you also work towards a better world. And you have this tremendous source of how many 600 maybe or more videos with very interesting people and relevant topics.
Well, okay, Norbert, I had maybe a misunderstanding because I kind of thought that the closest analog to what you're doing would be not Wikipedia, but Google. Because I kind of assumed that, or it looked to me like when I go to your website, that it shows a lot of categories, more than we do. We only have 6 global threats and 3 more, areas of
Mhm.
policy making, economics, governance with human rights issues, and civil society. But you have like 50 or different categories, and
30.
I assume that it's like a more concentrated version of Google. That if you want to look up the names of and the links to organizations that are doing beneficial work or attempting to really do useful service to humankind, that's you'd go there and you'd have a better chance of finding a compatible organization or whatever. Now you're talking about Wikipedia, and so you're going to have to make that connection for me. How is Wikipedia similar to what you're doing?
Let me start with Google first.
Okay.
So when we started, we very much resembled the old Google directory, which focused 90% on commerce, consumption, and only 10% society.
Oh,
So we had, in fact, mainly topics and links.
Mhm.
That changed. You can still search for things. So we have a good search engine, which you can use, but it's mainly like the old directory where you tick on a topic and then you find more information to work your way down on. Now, related to Wikipedia, it's just a comparison, okay? It's not a business claim or something. But relating to Wikipedia, we really focus on links. Wikipedia does not. Their links are minimal, poor, and good links, they don't link. For instance, we had excellent links on the Iraq War, on the US presidential elections, and you name it, Corona. They didn't care. It's a link collection. They don't do link collections. So, and the other thing is, we also recently, in the past few years, added texts like comprehensive guides, which you also do. We probably have a little longer guide on each topic or are working on it. But those guides are easy to read, should be fun to read. They include images. They include, at least our links include videos and social media, which you will not find on Wikipedia, for instance. And of course, yes, we focus on very much so on NGOs, related to all these relevant topics we care about, like peace, climate, human rights. Okay, so you find an extensive source there. So
The
that's why.
main people that I'm just wondering who your main clients are. I don't mean the people that you list, because it'd be very wonderful to be listed there. I hope we will be if we're not.
You are close to be, and you're to save the world is.
But also the clients, the people who use your service and
Yeah.
look things up. Do you know who the users are mainly?
No,
You don't know.
I don't have.
Mhm.
We use Matomo, so I know most users are coming from the Western world, are coming from Europe and the USA.
Uh-huh.
So
Let me show an image of your website, okay, for people.
please,
Here's Better World Info, where knowledge meets impact, and the URL is up here. Here it is. There you go. Here is the your website, the homepage, but I'll have to look it up to get to the
yeah.
to show the URL. I want to talk to both of you about what I think you probably have picked up through this thing. Here I sit in my home in Toronto, and I have a lot of contacts with people around the world, but you certainly have me beat, because Jill has thousands and thousands of contacts, not only in India where she lives, but she's a very cosmopolitan traveling person with a lot of contacts in governments elsewhere and so on. So Jill actually knows much more about especially Asian or Central Asian organizations than I do. And you, Norbert, I'm sure know much more about European NGOs than I do. And so I think to me, it's very interesting to try to make some comparisons about the different movements that exist in different parts of the world, and even the changes that are going on in movements, because we are living in a period of, well, almost a day by day change of, one dramatic crisis after another. I call the whole thing a polycrisis, because you've got to handle 50 different issues at the same time, and it's more overwhelming than most of us can do. But I kind of want to get to know how people in other parts of the world are coping with these extraordinary changes. So you, as somebody in touch with a lot of folks, I mean, because when you're going to add a new URL to your list, you need to know who these folks are and check them out, I guess. So you no doubt are in touch with a lot of folks, and Jill is too. Is there anything that we can discover about the current crisis or crises, threats that we're all feeling so risky today, and how things are going in Europe, say, compared to North America? Do you have any sense of that from the context that you have, Norbert?
It's probably a difficult question. We can try, Meta, but I think the most important thing is that we join resources. For instance, Jill has an insight into Asia, I don't, and maybe vice versa. So at some point, not now, of course, it would be great if we would connect, because I really sense that these are worlds apart.
Yes.
The West Europeans, they rarely deal with the Americans. I'm trying to work on that. And especially, we don't have Asia on our screen. I mean, the most relevant thing we have is Al Jazeera, probably. And that's also a unifying tool, potentially, at least with the current crisis in the Middle East. But yes, please, Jill, what are your thoughts?
So, I mean, this is incredible that you have such an information hub that has these 30 odd categories and you're working on all of them, you must have a huge team, or you've decentralized, or you work 24/7. I mean, that is an amazing, and I want to just congratulate you for
You.
putting together. It's a thankless task, and it seems to me in your description that you've got to a level of detail, minutia, that is really helpful. Not just sort of a typical resource, outfit that I've seen in the past. You really taken real effort. I think in the case of Asia, there's a series of hurdles. Well, first of all, you're quite right. The large perspective differences between the global South and what is Europe and North America mainly, is there are big gaps. And of course, there's exceptions to that, because there are people who are well educated in all of the global South who may be connected. But I think we need to see that as one problem, just especially on issues, on many, many global issues. For instance, BRICS is coming up as a new alliance from the European Union. And that's significant to say that somehow we don't have as much inclusivity. So one is around the global South. But I think in your question about Asia is that there's vernacular problems, Norbert. We have to do it in Hindi and English, and even maybe other languages. In China, you're not going to get much unless you're in, Chinese. So I think language is one, but it's also the use of information is another, that people will use information around particular issues rather than going to an information hub. So maybe finding out the current issues in Asia and then working from that point, to connect to your subcategories would be a way to get people in, if you will.
Thank you.
Of course, Africa is, again, a very complex terrain to think of information and collection of information. We tend to get it from colonial sources, I would say. And more Africans are talking about indigenous information, indigenous security, indigenous perspectives on development. So, and Latin America, of course, being Spanish for the most part.
You mentioned this thing about language, and that is crucial, of course. It's very, very important. We only broadcast in English, and when I do have people who speak a different language and we want to have some translation, it does not work. It just plain doesn't. And the truth of the matter is, accents also are crucial, because somebody who speaks, wonderful English written may not be something that I can even understand. So, but there was something I did about a year and a half ago that I have only experienced once, and yet I know it's possible because I did experience it. I was part of a citizens assembly meeting that was global, and we had people from several different language groups, and we were all talking to each other on Zoom, just as you and I are. But as people, before we started, we wrote down what language we were going to be speaking. And everybody, was somebody speaking Spanish and somebody speaking French. And I don't remember somebody speaking maybe Chinese, Mandarin or something. But at any rate, as that person would speak in Spanish, I would see the translation instantly under his face. And he would see translation when I was speaking English. And so everybody else That is apparently a function that's already existing, but I've
Yes.
never used it before, and it makes all the difference in the world. I found it was perfectly possible to have a good conversation, serious discussion about an issue with a whole bunch of people speaking different languages at the same time, and really do substantive, really meaningful debate. So my question is, how far along is that? And if that is really advanced enough, we should be using that. We should be using it in Hindi. We should be using it in German. I don't speak German, and so on. So let's look into that. And that's I just put that on my to-do list, something to look into. But the other question I want to ask both of you to reply to or speculate about is, in your sense, how much are activists in all of these different areas, for example, agriculture or industry or whatever you're doing, you're teaching people to do things in Jill and to farm better and so on. To what extent do activists in all of these different areas have a common set of values and goals? And to what extent, if you talk to them, are we truly divided about some really crucial issues? Do we all really know what we're working toward when it comes to peace, for example? When somebody says, I'm working for peace, can you pretty much understand what that looks like? Or do different people in different societies differ so much in their understanding of what is should be the common denominator, that we can't talk to each other? Norman, give me your impression, and then I'd like Jill to react to both of my issues.
I can start with the artificial intelligence guided translation of videos. I think you probably, since you witnessed it, you need to contact that person who put the show on the road. I also need to keep my eyes open, and we need to share resources, because I think these tools are pretty much at hand for you to use. And you are quite right. It's great to have this conversation in Hindi or whatever, Russian. I think it's possible. You still need to double check, but I think technology is there for the citizens of the world to use it. It's, of course, a big question of know-how.
The common understanding issue that you raised with among activists, we've set up a Peace Builders Forum India, which is peace builders across India, about 100 of them. And we meet 3-4 times a year now. And we identify common joint problems because we're all working in our micro areas, and we look at things jointly. What I've observed in that, which I would consider them all active peace builders, in that forum, people come from very different places, and so there's no uniformity. You have to respect that diversity. But I think that's the strength, because when you come to a common, so we had the common problem of a Manipur civil war. So when we were dealing with that problem, people came with different skills, different strengths, and different ideas in solving the problem. So, we say unity and diversity, that when you have a real diverse group of people, you get better solutions. How you bring them together to harmonize around a common understanding or a common problem, or even to talk to each other, which is what we do at Project Save the World. That is, of course, really, really helpful in the harmonizing, but you want that difference. And that's where Project Save the World has been so useful. So I would imagine we have this small vision of called Peace 7 instead of G7, P7, where we would like to see 7 countries who identify themselves really with some common peace building understanding based on, better world information and Project Save the World. And come together, or at least internally find peace strategies to do. So the peace strategy in India has been to build a Department of Peace in one of the states of India, Rajasthan. In Switzerland, who is also part of the Peace 7, they have talked about their decentralized system and how they work in a kind of consensus building process, what one might say direct democracy. When we talk about Canada, I think Canada has done an enormous amount on many issues, but in particular nuclear weapons regulation, for instance, or looking at human security issues. Costa Rica, and so on. So if you go around, we've tried to start contacting 7 different countries who have different strategies. And that, if you harmonize that into something like a P7 coalition, then in fact you have, sort of modeling for other countries. So I think to answer your question, back to relevant to Better World Information and Project Save the World, what we really want is to have differences, but find ways for harmonizing around the very difficult issues of violence and war and all those other 30 or 6 critical threats that have been identified.
I'm back. We had a little break, and now I can tell you that we have been joined by Rachel Meller, who is somehow an assistant to Norbert, and that's what I want to explore a little bit. Jill and Norbert are still with me, but now we have Rachel as well, and I'm told that Rachel is someplace in the north of England on a farm looking after some animals. Mm-hmm. So that is a little different from what I expected. I thought you were minding a computer someplace, but good for you, Rachel. I'm all in favor of animals. So it's nice to meet you. And why don't you share with us what you do in this operation, Better World Information? What's your role?
So I have worked for Better World for 5 years. I initially started as a researcher. So important topics that come up all the time: human rights, peace, social justice, environmental issues, and adding and expanding the directory, the important directory that we're creating. It's always growing. Initially, the website was primarily a directory, and what we've been working on over the last 5 years is filling it out and providing these really important guides on ongoing issues and issues that are affecting us today, issues that are going to affect future generations. So that's what we're doing. They're easy to navigate guides, they're comprehensive, and they explain complex issues in an easy to understand way, in a world that's full of corporate media. Mm-hmm. And it's not independent. We're being filled with misinformation, and we just want to shine a light on important issues that are underreported. Mm-hmm. As well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's my role.
Brilliant. Well, that's certainly. Now tell me how you organize it. You has many different categories that people can search, and I wonder, do you have one essay for each of these categories, or tell me how these guides, or is that what you call them? These overviews of topics, mm-hmm. how you have this organized?
So we try to prioritize the most pressing issues, ongoing issues as well. So, for example, at the moment we've got the NATO meeting. This is ongoing. We've also got the issue in Iran with Israel. We've got the EU special debts rearmament. So these are the priorities, and the categories are organised into, I want to say 15, between 12 and 15 main categories. So you can either use the search bar to search, like you would on Google or Wikipedia, and search for a specific issue. So, for example, you could type in deforestation. Okay. And there you'll find a category on deforestation, and all of that will be then separated into, for example, organizations, must-read articles, video news, and just key issues in that area. And you could find that for any other global issue that you can think of. So climate change, corruption, democracy, economy, you name it. It goes on and on. So we try to prioritize. We're a small team. We do our best. And yeah, we're growing all the time.
Well, that sounds like what Norbert was referring to a little earlier about being similar in a way to Wikipedia. And that surprised me because I thought it was mostly a directory and not, and I think Wikipedia is definitely more than a directory. So that sounds like what you're talking about now is you put these essays or something like that. How do you try to keep these up to date very frequently? Do you get keep people working on these to make sure they're timely? Or do you have one long one that's supposed to be good for the next 10 years for each category?
Well, as we know, things are updating all the time. We have to update them. It's the only way to keep people informed as events develop. We can't, we are a small team. We do our best. But yeah, again, we'll prioritize. So me and Norbert will speak and we'll soundboard what's happening, what's the most urgent, and we and other collaborators and volunteers can edit the guides. They're very easy to edit, and we encourage experts to help us to edit the guides and to keep them up to date. And we also will always have the date at the bottom as well, so people will know exactly how up to date they are as things develop.
Oh, that's good. I can't. I have to admit, ours do not have dates on them. We have essays that were written for each of the threat categories, and sometimes they're fairly long. Many thousands of words long, but I wouldn't say that we keep them up to date that much, and we haven't been putting dates on them. So, you're making me a little bit feel guilty.
No, dates are useful, but so are guides for overarching categories. So some things are not going to change. So for example, animal rights, we're always going to fight for animal rights, and there's always going to be issues, unfortunately. That doesn't need updating daily. That's not an ongoing changing situation. So any information like that is valuable, but the dates are useful. So
I'm fascinated.
I'm sorry, Jill, I interrupted.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by the fact that you've created an interactive website where it sounds like a collaborator can directly go to the website, make the changes, so they don't need to necessarily go through a central point, which means that your work is more decentralized, and it sounds like that's very realistic since you're covering such a broad range of categories. May I ask how many collaborators you have overall? Perhaps numbers are changing, but generally averages?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that not anybody can make an edit. We don't want somebody who hasn't done their research or somebody who might be have ulterior motives to come in and make changes. We want things to remain a high quality. We invite expert collaborators, and I would be the key writer, and Norbert's probably better answering the question about staff and volunteers, if you don't mind, Norbert.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in.
Yeah.
Overall, I think we have, apart from Rachel, who is more or less my partner and at least on the job, and a key worker, we have about 4 or so co-workers on the English website. On the German website, there are additional people to join in. With regards to experts, well, that's very limited until now. We have occasional contacts. I ask for advice, but I think we are in the early stages of getting that ball rolling. And it's essentially just an email to us would do, and we will explain what can be done. So if somebody has 50 links to add, well, we can do it for them, or they can do it themselves. If someone wants to change a guide because he really is or she really is an expert in that field, that would be terrific and most welcome. So she will get a password. Or if she doesn't want to contribute on a regular basis, we would just ask her to send us her manuscript and we will upload it for her or him. And so, yeah, we are open, but it's not like everybody can throw in anything. And that's for obvious reasons, because then you have to censor and to sort and to... So it's best if you meet someone who is knowledgeable, whom you trust, and then we are happy to let them do whatever they want within reasonable margins, I would say. And that's why I feel we are relatively open, and I look forward to some of the experts, including yourself. We give you an example after this interview where you can participate. I just leave it like that.
My impression is, if you're in the same situation most people are, it isn't that you have hordes of people knocking at your door saying, I want to write for you, please let me in. You have do an awful lot of scouting around to try to find someone and then to induce them to put the work in.
I think that's more the case. The other point is we are still, I think we have a terrific website, which can be doubled in quality easily within a year if 1 or 2 more people pitch in. But in the moment, because of reach, we really need support by people like yourselves to reach additional audiences, because Google and the media won't do the job for us. And in order to reach those potential volunteers or experts, we really need to increase our reach. So that's a big challenge for us.
Well, now, wait a minute. That's not a problem. The problem, I think you're going to find lots of people would love to extend your reach, but in a way that you might not welcome, which is you could just give your email list to a lot of people and they would want to send it out to everybody in the world. When they produce a newsletter, they'd like to send it out. I would too.
That's not my experience, especially not in the peace movement and other climate movements, etc. Everybody is busy with themselves and they have problems maintaining their email accounts and answering emails. I wish it was different.
Oh,
I
I can
thought,
help you with that easily. Just
you're a different kind of person, Meta.
well, yes, but I
Special
mean,
kind of person.
Very unique.
Yes.
well,
Okay.
no, I kind of think, because you could sell your list and there would be people who would buy it. So
Yeah, that's
I'm
true,
pretty
but I will
sure
not sell it.
but of course you wouldn't. I mean, my guess is that you would not do that. And
No.
your list, your people on your list wouldn't like it if you did. And I don't blame them. But some better use could be made of your list, and I'll be happy to be the first one to offer to take it and work with you on that. That'd be terrific.
Thank you. We may start with a profile of yourself and take it from there.
No. Start with you, or with Rachel, or maybe
Sure,
pets
sure.
that she's looking after.
Even-
What kind of animals are you taking care of these days, Rachel?
Sorry, how many animals did you say?
I thought you were in England taking care of an animal.
Yeah, so we have 6 horses and we have 12 Labradors. Yeah.
Okay, we'll start with
Small ones.
animals. Mhm. Okay. Well, there are two different angles on our challenge. I think we have the same challenges. Try to get it out there, and then the other challenge is try to recruit people to help make it work and to contribute articles and information and knowledge. And then the challenge of finding out how we're doing. And I think that is the last point is one of the most difficult, because it's sort of like when I was teaching. I had the feeling, I was a professor for many years, and I had the feeling, I was just pushing information out there into the world, and it might have been thrown into a dark black hole or something, because when students graduate, you never see them again or hear from them again. So you don't know that you've had any influence or any impact or that you've done anything of any value, except once in a great while you'll bump into somebody who said, I took your course 40 years ago. And that's very gratifying, but usually you don't know. And it's sort of the same with publication. And
Yes.
I'm sure you know the same thing, that you put your heart into this work, and then you don't know how much you're actually able to contribute to somebody who can use it. And tell me, I kind of wish that we had some sort of testing or some way of knowing who's reading this stuff or watching it, and what do they think about it. There are places where you have chat windows and people can add their thoughts. I don't think they do it very much, but do you have anything like that where people can give you feedback?
I think that's a very valid point you are making. We, of course, can be reached by email, but you are right. We probably should introduce something like an occasional questionnaire for users, realizing that maybe only a fraction will answer, but that would be helping with information. Other than that, I think in society as a whole, we are bad with feedback and supporting each other. So I think that's a general problem. So we are very much focused on ourselves, our own little box, family and whatnot. Can be changed, of course, but it takes awareness and goodwill. And the other thing is, what we are using is a kind of a Matomo statistic software. So I have some idea where the users are coming from, which topics they are interested in, etc. So that's quite useful. However, it only counts those who allow us to be counted. So it's not as intrusive as Google statistics.
Yeah.
And it still doesn't really tell us who visited for what reason and the like. So It could be a kid playing around. It could be a professor. It could be an important politician on the other side of the world. We don't know.
Jill, I think you have more sense of what happens with your work in India, don't you? Because you move around and talk to people. You actually go out and meet more people than I would. And don't you have a better sense of how you're really connecting to your audience?
So we discussed this a little earlier, but for Rachel's sake, Norbert said that the use was more in Europe and North America. Norbert, I think I've got that correct.
Yeah, correct.
And the challenge is to get it out. And we raised the issue that language is a barrier, but more importantly, the cultural perspectives. If you ask someone in India to write something broadly, one of the overview papers, you may find there's slightly different emphasis by an Indian writer. Yeah. So there are some, I would say, broad distinctions, if you will, between North and South, but also across the regions. Mm-hmm. And so I would, for instance, I was looking very carefully to what extent you're referring to nonviolence, because from the point of view of peace, that is our main orientation. We come from a tradition of Gandhi, where it's not just about having bodies of peacemaking or peace-building strategies, but it's also about how do you imbibe nonviolence into your life, because that was one of the basic precepts of Gandhi. Mm-hmm. And so I will be the first person to start helping you with a little overview on nonviolence, because I think I can make a critique of what you have, but I also should therefore say I can help do something about it. But I think these are the shortcomings which we slowly face when you have more and more people who are coming from other parts of the world trying to identify with your categories and then making suggestions how to broaden it to cover off some of the ways that they may be looking at, and even adding issues, like child trafficking. Or
you make it sound as if the only thing you do is nonviolence, but I see that's the heart and soul of what you're about. But Gandhi also was very much into development work, trying to show how to use work for in the economy in productive ways. And you teach people how to farm and how to do various things. I think I wouldn't want to miss that. I think that's a fairly important part of your work.
The development aspect, yes, is also perhaps could be more prominent, maybe. Because in developing societies, in a country like India with 60%, Rachel would appreciate this, 60% of the people are in rural areas. And so farming and hand-based work is where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. However, they're also not the people who probably will be reading your site. But on the other hand, the urban people in India who middle class and more affluent who would be reading your site or Better World Information would like to relate their own people, who are from rural India. So in Nonviolent Economy, what we try to do is to show, what we do is see nonviolence not just in terms of civil action, but we see it in terms of how does it influence the economy, governance, education, and so on. So in terms of the economy, in India, we have been taking small-scale livelihood programs and seeing how people have really created an alternative economy in India, because 90% of people are in the unorganized sector, not in industrial sector. Mm-hmm. And as a result, their economy is all about farming 2 acres of land or producing cloth or whatever. So that would, that kind of framing would be what someone like me would add to your category of nonviolence, is to broaden it, to make it relevant to a developing society like the one I've worked in for 40 years. So naturally, it's second nature.
Well, I can see that we could somehow, if we figure out how to do it, we can hook our three networks, link them better together so that those who receive things from one of us will, maybe not everything, I don't know, maybe everything, but I don't think everything.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to share everything in the world with everybody, but more, maybe we can find which subgroups should be linked together.
Regional priorities would be good if you broke down a little bit the regional
Sure.
priorities. Yeah.
Well, especially between you and us, we can just choose issues close to our common heart. So it will be different between other people and other groups, of course. I would be glad if Jill joins in. I mean, she may or may not know that I have been at Gandhigram 40 years ago and that I'm quite familiar with certain thoughts and things, and that we have a decent section on nonviolence and development and aid. However, she is quite right. She has a unique perspective about that in real life. She has a special perspective on the connection of those two, which I don't. And of course, we don't.
Thank you very much, Norbert. I'd be happy to contribute. Yeah.
The threats that humanity face, there's several very imminent and serious threats: climate, war, famine, AI, all of these, several of them I think are extremely important, and they're all connected. And we all say, yes, we all know that they're connected. But finding the ways in which they actually need to be addressed collectively in real practice is not that easy, into bringing people together from different disciplines to talk about the same issue. It's not easy to do, but I think what
we should try.
should be done more often. I think it is important. Don't you? I mean,
yeah. I mean, the main thing I want to add is we should not only see threats, we should also see projects of hope, examples where we can learn from, inspiration, tools we didn't use before. So that's the other aspect I want to add. Yes, we are into threats and everything, but for our users, I think it's important that they find something interesting, something that is of use to them, plus kind of gives them encouragement to do something about it. So good examples also would be great. It's not just articles, videos, and organizations. It's good projects, good ideas we try to focus on.
Well, if you have those, then that is definitely an amplification of what we do, because I don't think we do tell stories as much.
You're good.
Well, if you tell stories, well, that's your department, and we go.
Okay.
People over to you. Yeah. Okay. So now tell me a little bit before we quit more about Rachel's role. You are kind of involved in getting the updates and the overviews, the guides, I think you said. You're monitoring what is going on in the world and making sure that somebody refreshes the things that you put on your website. Is that right?
Usually me.
And okay, so it's usually you who write them. Good. And how do people find you? Because I think if you may want to take a minute to tell people, we're not going to put on an image of your website, but let's say they go to your website, which is Better World Info, right? Is that .com or what's the...
It's betterworld.info.
Betterworld.info. Okay. And when they get there, I did see the homepage is a very plain, simple homepage, but then you have to know that there's a lot more behind that. You have hundreds of thousands of URLs. Is that right?
This is correct. Yes. Can seem overwhelming, but if you've got a specific topic that you want to look into, it's pretty incredible. You can hone it down. So what have we touched on?
Okay, I'll stick it in at the end and show everybody.
Education, useful tools. You could even search tools for activists and you would find many separate categories specific to what you needed. So digital tools, how to organize a protest, for example. Really useful stuff. So on the surface, it would seem that you could be overwhelmed, but it's really not. They're well organized. You can find what you need if you use the right search words, just like Google.
I was looking for URLs of websites, a directory, but where are the guides?
So we have guides for each of the main categories. And then we are currently working on, and we're making very good progress on creating guides for all of the subcategories. So the main categories are the ones which you see on the homepage that you mentioned.
The most important thing is to visit the website and explore it for a start. So I repeat, betterworld.info. So that's a very important thing. And then you find something which is close to your heart, and you may want to share it with your friends or your colleagues. And that would be terrific and very important to get out the word. You may have certain suggestions about links, or you think that a certain text passage can be improved. Please let us know. We are open, and we are especially open to experts in the field. And you can also grow together with us if you want to, if you are just have a passion for a certain topic and you want to develop further for yourself. We try to help you. But it's important to share with others, use our social media in order to do that. And write us an email if you have any interest or if you have any feedback.
All right. I think I see the beginnings of a beautiful friendship here. I think this is...
Thank you.
Thank you, Norbert, for all your collective work.
Wonderful. Bye.
Bye for now.